My son's girlfriend's dad showed up at 2 a.m. saying, "We need to talk now." The doorbell rang at 2:17 a.m., followed immediately by aggressive pounding that made my apartment door rattle in its frame. I'd been awake anyway, staring at the ceiling and wondering how I was going to break it to my son Marcus that his job at the auto shop might disappear thanks to Richard Pemberton's latest power play. Richard fucking Pemberton. The man who'd spent the last 6 months making it crystal clear that my 19-year-old son wasn't good enough for his precious daughter Emma. The man who'd actually used the phrase, "people like you," when referring to Marcus and me during our one and only face-to-face conversation 3 weeks ago. I stumbled to the peephole, expecting to see Mrs. Chen from 4B complaining about my neighbor's music again. Instead, I saw the last person I expected, Richard Pemberton himself, still in what looked like a $1,000 suit, but rumpled and disheveled in a way that seemed physically impossible for someone who probably had his ties pressed by servants. "Open the door, Sullivan. We need to talk. Now." His voice carried that same commanding tone he'd used when he told me my son was a distraction Emma couldn't afford and that I should encourage Marcus to find someone more suitable to his station. I considered pretending I wasn't home. Hell, I considered a lot of things in those few seconds. But curiosity won out. I unlocked the deadbolt. Richard pushed past me without invitation, bringing the smell of expensive cologne and what might have been desperation. His usually perfect silver hair looked like he'd been running his hands through it, and there were actual wrinkles in that pristine suit. "Do you know who I am?" he asked, which was rich considering he'd made sure I knew exactly who he was when he'd cornered me outside Marcus's work last month. "Yeah, you're the guy who told my son he wasn't worth the dirt under your daughter's fingernails. What I don't know is why you're in my living room at 2 in the morning." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "I never said. You said Marcus was reaching above his class and that Emma needed to focus on appropriate social connections for her future. Ring any bells?" Richard's jaw worked silently for a moment. In the harsh fluorescent light of my kitchen, he looked older than his 50-something years. More fragile. The kind of fragile that comes with the walls closing in. "I need your help," he said finally, the words seeming to physically pain him. I almost laughed. "My help? The guy who makes $38,000 a year doing forensic accounting for insurance companies? The guy whose son you had banned from your country club's parking lot? You don't understand." "I understand plenty. I understand you cost me the Morrison case because you called my boss and suggested I wasn't reliable. I understand you've made my son feel like shit about himself for months. What I don't understand is what could possibly make you think I'd lift a finger to help you with anything." Richard's composure cracked completely. He sank into my second-hand couch like a deflated balloon, his head in his hands. "Because if you don't," he whispered, "I'm going to lose everything. And I mean everything. My company, my reputation, my family." He looked up at me with eyes that held something I'd never seen there before, genuine fear. "Sullivan, I'm fucked. Completely, utterly fucked. And you're the only person who can save me." I stared at Richard Pemberton crumpled on my couch, watching this man who'd spent months treating my family like garbage now begging for my help. The irony was so thick I could taste it. "Let me get this straight," I said, crossing my arms. 3 weeks ago, you told me that people like me were parasites looking for handouts from their betters. Now you're sitting in my living room at 2 in the morning asking for what, exactly?" Richard's hands shook as he loosened his tie. "There's going to be an article in the Financial Herald tomorrow morning. Front page. About Pemberton Holdings and some irregularities in our overseas accounts." The way he said irregularities made my forensic accountant instincts perk up. In my 15 years investigating insurance fraud and corporate malfeasance, I'd learned that when rich guys used words like irregularities at 2 a.m., they usually meant felonies. "What kind of irregularities, Richard?" He winced at my use of his first name. "Good. Let him squirm. My CFO, Patricia Vance, has been creative with our Malaysian subsidiaries' numbers. The Herald somehow got hold of documents showing we've been inflating revenue figures by roughly $47 million over the past 18 months. And that's just what they found." I whistled low. $47 million. Jesus, Richard. That's not creative accounting, that's securities fraud. The SEC is going to crawl so far up your ass they'll be able to read your dental records. I didn't know. He shot to his feet, pacing my tiny living room like a caged animal. "Patricia handled all the overseas operations. I trusted her completely. She's been with the company for 12 years, and now I find out she's been cooking books and probably embezzling funds to cover gambling debts. And you need me because in about 6 hours, when that article goes live, every regulatory agency in the country is going to want my head. The FBI will freeze our accounts. Our stock will crater. Our investors will flee. Unless..." He stopped pacing and looked at me with desperate hope. "Unless I can prove that I'm the victim here too. That Patricia went rogue and I'm cooperating fully with authorities." I was starting to see where this was going. "You need someone to audit your books. Fast. Find the smoking gun that points directly at Patricia and keeps you out of federal prison. The company's regular auditors are Morrison, Kessler and Associates. They won't touch this with a 10-foot pole once the story breaks. Too much liability. But you specialize in forensic investigation. You find fraud for a living. You could trace exactly what Patricia did and when she did it. Morrison, Kessler and Associates. The same firm where Richard had gotten me blacklisted from their biggest case last month. The case that would have paid my rent for 6 months. Even if I could do what you're asking," I said slowly, "why would I? You've made it your personal mission to destroy my son's happiness and damage my career. Hell, 2 weeks ago you told Emma's mother that Marcus was probably only dating your daughter to get access to your money." Richard's face flushed red. "I was protecting my family. From what? From a kid who works 2 jobs to help pay for community college. From a 19-year-old who's never even had a speeding ticket." The silence stretched between us. Outside, I could hear the early morning garbage trucks beginning their rounds. In a few hours, Richard Pemberton's world was going to explode across every business publication in the country. "What would it take?" he asked quietly. "What would it take for you to help me?" Now we were getting to the interesting part. I let the question hang in the air for a long moment, savoring the role reversal. Richard Pemberton, the man who'd called my son trailer trash within Emma's earshot, was now asking what it would take to save his empire. First, let's talk about what you're really asking, I said, settling into my recliner. You want me to dive into what's probably a multi-million-dollar fraud case, work around the clock to untangle 18 months of cooked books, and somehow produce a bulletproof analysis that clears your name before the feds come knocking. That's not a weekend project, Richard. That's the kind of deep-dive investigation that takes weeks and costs six figures. His face went pale. I can pay you. Whatever your rate is. My rate is $45 an hour for insurance work. But this isn't insurance work. This is saving your ass from federal prison work. The kind of forensic analysis you need would normally cost you $300 an hour, minimum. For a case this complex, you're looking at 4 to 6 weeks of round-the-clock investigation. Call it $200,000, just for starters. Richard's relief was visible. Done. I'll wire the money. I wasn't finished. I held up a hand. See, here's the thing. Even if I wanted to help you, there's a problem. I can't do this kind of work alone. I'd need access to your servers, your bank records, Patricia's files. I'd need to interview employees, cross-reference transactions, build a timeline of every suspicious transfer. For that, I'd need a team. Then hire a team. Money's no object. The best forensic accountants in the city work for Morrison, Kessler and Associates. You remember them, right? The firm where you had me blacklisted last month. I smiled without humor. Turns out when you trash someone's reputation in a specialized field, it comes back to bite you. The color drained from his face completely. There has to be someone else. Oh, there is. There's Peterson and Associates down in Baltimore. They'd take the case, but they'd need 2 weeks just to get up to speed on your company's structure. There's also that boutique firm in Chicago, Hendricks Forensics. Top-notch work, but they're booked solid until October. Richard slumped back onto my couch. The article goes live in 6 hours. Trading opens at 9:30. By lunch, Pemberton Holdings will be worthless. Probably, I agreed. Unless you can get Morrison, Kessler to take the case. They already know your company inside and out from previous audits. They could have a preliminary report ready by market close today if they started now. But they won't touch it once the story breaks. They might. If the referral came from someone they trusted. Someone whose reputation for integrity was unquestionable. I leaned back in my chair. Someone like me, for instance. Richard stared at me, understanding dawning in his eyes. You want me to grovel? I want you to apologize. There's a difference. I want you to call Tom Morrison right now, at 2:45 in the morning, and tell him that you made a mistake about my character. I want you to admit that you let personal prejudice cloud your professional judgment. And then you'll help me. Then I'll make some calls. Morrison, Kessler might take the case if I vouch for you, which is ironic as hell considering you tried to destroy my credibility with them 5 weeks ago. Richard's hands clenched into fists. I could see him struggling with his pride, weighing his arrogance against his desperation. Finally, he pulled out his phone. What's Morrison's number? But before I could answer, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. Richard looked at the screen and his face went white as paper. It's my lawyer, he whispered. At 3 a.m., that can't be good news. He answered the call, and I watched his expression crumble as he listened. When he hung up, his voice was barely audible. The FBI just raided Patricia's house. She's disappeared. And they found evidence that this goes deeper than just inflated revenue figures. The blood drained from Richard's face as he stared at his phone. How much deeper? I asked, though I was pretty sure I didn't want to know the answer. Patricia wasn't just cooking books, he said, his voice hollow. She was moving money through shell companies in the Cayman Islands. Real money. Client funds. Pension investments. He looked up at me with the expression of a man watching his life collapse in real time. My lawyer thinks it could be north of 200 million. I felt my stomach drop. 47 million in inflated revenue was securities fraud. 200 million in missing client funds was the kind of scandal that destroyed entire companies and sent everyone remotely involved to federal prison for decades. Jesus Christ, Richard. 200 million. That's not embezzlement, that's racketeering. RICO territory. The FBI seized Patricia's computers, her files, everything. But here's the worst part, his voice cracked. She had signature authority on those accounts because I gave it to her. Every transfer, every movement of funds, it all traces back to authorizations with my name on them. Now I understood why he looked like a dead man walking. In the eyes of federal prosecutors, Richard wouldn't be Patricia's victim, he'd be her co-conspirator. The CEO who claimed he knew nothing while hundreds of millions disappeared under his watch. When did you last see Patricia? I asked. Friday afternoon. She said she was taking a long weekend, flying to visit her sister in Portland. He laughed bitterly. There is no sister in Portland. My lawyer says the FBI thinks she's been liquidating assets for weeks, maybe months. They found evidence she emptied her personal accounts and sold her condo 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. Right around the time Richard had cornered me outside Marcus's workplace, so concerned about protecting his family's reputation. While he was busy playing class warrior, his CFO was systematically dismantling his empire. The pension funds, I said slowly. Whose money are we talking about? Teachers. Firefighters. City employees from 6 different municipalities. Richard's hands shook as he loosened his tie completely. People who trusted us with their retirement savings. People who have nothing to do with any of this. And there it was, the detail that changed everything. This wasn't just about Richard's pride or his company's stock price. Patricia had stolen the retirement money of teachers and firefighters. People like my neighbor Mrs. Chen, who taught 3rd grade for 30 years. People like Marcus's girlfriend's uncle, who'd been with the fire department for 2 decades. The Herald doesn't know about the pension funds yet, Richard continued. The FBI is keeping that quiet while they investigate. But when it comes out, He trailed off, but we both knew how that sentence ended. When it came out, Richard wouldn't just lose his company, he'd become the most hated man in 6 cities. How long before the pension fund story breaks? I asked. My lawyer thinks we have maybe 48 hours before someone leaks it. After that, it won't matter if I'm guilty or innocent. The court of public opinion will destroy me. I stared at Richard Pemberton, the man who'd spent months treating my son like dirt, now facing complete annihilation. The irony should have felt satisfying, but all I could think about were those teachers and firefighters who might never see their retirement money again. You're right about one thing, I said finally. Morrison, Kessler won't touch this now. No reputable firm will. The liability exposure is too massive. So you won't help me? I didn't say that. I stood up, pacing to my kitchen window where the first hint of dawn was creeping across the sky. But if I do this, Richard, it won't be to save your reputation. It'll be to find that missing money and get it back to the people who earned it. There's something else, Richard said quietly. Something I haven't told you. I turned back from the window. More bad news. Because I'm not sure how much worse this can get. The FBI thinks Patricia had help. Inside help. He met my eyes, and I saw genuine fear there. They found encrypted communications on her personal laptop. Messages coordinating with someone else in the company. Someone with access to client accounts and transfer protocols. The implications hit me like a sledgehammer. You think there's another conspirator still inside Pemberton Holdings? I don't think it, I know it. Patricia couldn't have moved that much money alone. The pension fund transfers required two-factor authentication, my signature plus a secondary approval from either the head of operations or the compliance director. Who are those people? James Kellerman runs operations. He's been with me for 8 years. And Sarah Chen handles compliance. Richard stopped mid-sentence, his face going white. Oh my god. Sarah Chen. What about her? She's been asking strange questions lately. About our offshore protocols, about Patricia's travel schedule. Last week she requested access to files she had no business looking at. Richard's hands shook as he pulled out his phone. I need to call the FBI. Wait. I grabbed his wrist. Don't call anyone yet. Think this through. If Sarah Chen is involved, and she knows the FBI raided Patricia's house 3 hours ago, what do you think she's doing right now? Richard's face crumpled. Destroying evidence. Covering her tracks. Or worse. If there's still money sitting in accounts she can access. I let the implication hang. How much liquid cash does Pemberton Holdings keep in operational accounts? Usually around 12 million for day-to-day operations, but with the quarterly distributions coming up. He checked his phone, fingers flying over the screen. Fuck. Fuck. There should be 38 million in the primary operational account as of Friday close. Should be. He was frantically typing in login credentials. I'm checking now, but the system is slow, his phone screen loaded, and all color drained from his face. It's gone. All of it. The account shows a balance of $57,000. $38 million vanished in the hours since Patricia's arrest became known. Teachers and firefighters weren't the only victims now, Richard's company was completely hollowed out. When did those transfers happen? The timestamps show. Richard's voice was barely a whisper. 12:30 a.m. 1:15 a.m. 2:05 a.m. He looked up at me with hollow eyes. While I was driving over here to beg for your help, Sarah was cleaning out every account she could access. I felt a cold anger settling in my chest. Not for Richard, he'd made his bed with his arrogance and poor oversight. But for Mrs. Chen from 4B, who'd mentioned just last week that her teacher's pension was all she had. For Marcus's friend Tommy, whose dad was counting on his firefighter's retirement to pay for his cancer treatments. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice cutting through Richard's despair. You're going to call the FBI right now and tell them about Sarah. Every detail, every conversation, every file she accessed. Then you're going to give me complete access to your servers, your records, everything. You'll help me. I'll help find that money. But let me be crystal clear about something, Richard. I leaned forward, making sure he understood every word. This isn't about saving your company or your reputation. Those are probably gone already. This is about tracing every stolen dollar and getting it back to the people who earned it. And if I find evidence that you knew what Patricia and Sarah were doing, you'll turn me in. In a heartbeat. Richard nodded slowly. And my son? Emma? If I do this, if I cooperate completely, will you talk to Marcus about giving Emma another chance? I almost laughed at the audacity. Even now, facing total ruin, he was still trying to negotiate his daughter's happiness. Richard, your daughter never stopped seeing my son. They've been meeting in secret for weeks because you forbade their relationship. The only person who needs to give anyone another chance here is you. The silence that followed my words was deafening. Richard stared at me like I'd just told him the earth was flat, his mouth opening and closing without sound. That's impossible, he finally managed. Emma wouldn't lie to me. She promised she'd stop seeing Marcus after our conversation. Your conversation, I repeated. You mean when you told her that dating my son would compromise her future prospects and that she needed to make better choices about the company she keeps? Richard flinched. How do you? Because Emma told Marcus exactly what you said. Word for word. She also told him that she'd rather lose her trust fund than lose him, but that she needed time to figure out how to handle you. I pulled out my phone and showed him a text from Marcus, timestamped 11:47 p.m. Asterisk Dad, Emma and I are at Denny's on 5th Street. She's really upset about something with her family. Can you pick us up around 1 a.m., asterisk. I was planning to get them when you showed up, I continued. They've been meeting at coffee shops, study groups, anywhere you wouldn't think to look. Your daughter has been lying to you for weeks because you made it clear that her feelings didn't matter as much as your social status. Richard's phone buzzed with an incoming text. He glanced at it and his face went ashen. It's Emma. She says she's not coming home tonight. That she knows about the FBI and the company, and she's staying with a friend. She probably saw the news alerts. Your company's stock is already suspended from trading, it hit the wire services 20 minutes ago. He scrolled through more messages, his breathing becoming shallow. She says she's ashamed to be my daughter. That she found out from Marcus how I've been treating him and his family, and she wants nothing to do with me. The irony was perfect. While Richard had been so focused on protecting his family's reputation, he destroyed his relationship with the one family member who actually mattered. And now, with his empire crumbling around him, Emma was turning to the very people he tried to keep her away from. There's something else you should know, I said, watching him crumble further. Marcus has been saving money to buy Emma a promise ring. Nothing expensive, he's been working double shifts at the auto shop to afford a $300 ring from K Jewelers. He was planning to give it to her next week, to show her that he's serious about their future despite everything you've put them through. Richard's hands shook as he set down his phone. I've lost everything, haven't I? The company, my reputation, my daughter. Before I could respond, his phone rang again. This time the caller ID showed Agent Martinez, FBI. Richard looked at me with panic in his eyes. Answer it, I said. And Richard? Tell them everything. About Sarah, about the missing operational funds, about Patricia's timeline. Don't hold anything back. He accepted the call with trembling fingers. Agent Martinez. Yes, what? When? His face went white as he listened. I understand. Yes, I'll be there within the hour. He hung up and looked at me with the expression of a condemned man. They found Sarah Chen. She tried to board a red-eye flight to Singapore 2 hours ago with falsified documents. TSA flagged her when she couldn't explain why she was carrying $40,000 in cash. Richard's voice was barely audible. Agent Martinez says they want me at the federal building immediately for questioning. They're treating me as either a cooperating witness or a co-conspirator, depending on what I tell them in the next few hours. The walls were closing in fast. In less than 4 hours, Richard Pemberton had gone from arrogant millionaire to potential federal defendant. And somewhere in the Cayman Islands, $200 million in stolen retirement funds was slipping further out of reach with each passing minute. Wait, I said, grabbing Richard's arm as he started to pocket his phone. Before you go downtown to get grilled by the FBI, there's something we need to do first. What are you talking about? I can't keep federal agents waiting. You can't walk into that interrogation room without leverage. Right now, you look guilty as hell, CEO of a company where 2 of your top executives just stole potentially $200 million, and you claim you knew nothing. Agent Martinez is going to assume you're either incompetent or complicit. Richard's face crumpled. But I didn't know. Doesn't matter what you knew. What matters is what you can prove. I was already moving toward my laptop, my mind racing through possibilities. You said Sarah needed secondary authorization for those pension fund transfers. Your signature plus hers, right? Yes, but I never signed anything for pension fund withdrawals. Exactly. Which means she forged your authorization or found another way to bypass the two-factor authentication. I opened my laptop and started pulling up forensic analysis software. If we can prove the authorizations were falsified before you meet with the FBI, you go from suspect to victim. But you'd need access to our servers, our security protocols. That could take days. Not if you give me remote administrator access right now. I looked up from my screen. Your company's IT infrastructure, do you use cloud-based storage for document authentication? Yes, we switched to SecureDoc last year for all signature verification. Patricia insisted on it, said it would streamline overseas operations. Richard paused, understanding dawning. If she chose the system, then she probably knew how to game it. SecureDoc has a vulnerability in their timestamp protocols. I discovered it 6 months ago while investigating a case for Morrison, Kessler. If someone knows the right backdoor access codes, they can create documents with false authorization dates. Richard was already pulling out his laptop. What do you need? Your CEO login credentials and about 30 minutes. If I can prove those authorization signatures were created using Patricia or Sarah's computers instead of yours, the FBI will know you're telling the truth. But as Richard typed in his username, his laptop screen flickered and went black. He tried rebooting, but kept getting an error message, network access denied. Contact system administrator. Shit, he breathed. They've locked me out. Sarah must have changed the administrative passwords before she tried to flee. My phone rang, Marcus calling. I glanced at the time, 3:47 a.m. Dad, are you okay? Emma just got a call from her mom saying the FBI raided someone's house and her dad's company is all over the financial news sites. I'm fine, son. Where are you? Still at Denny's with Emma. She's pretty freaked out. Her mom is crying and won't tell her what's happening, just that her dad is in serious trouble. Emma wants to know if you've heard from Mr. Pemberton. I looked across my living room at Richard, who was desperately trying different password combinations on his laptop. His face was gray with exhaustion and terror. Marcus, put Emma on the phone. Dad? What's going on? Emma's voice was small, scared. Emma, I need you to listen carefully. Does your father have any backup access to his company computers? Maybe a secondary login or emergency protocols? Why would you? She stopped. Oh my God. He's there, isn't he? He came to you for help. Just answer the question, sweetheart. He has a secure tablet in his study at home. It's biometrically locked, only responds to his fingerprint. He uses it for after-hours trading authorizations. Her voice hardened. But I'm not helping him. Not after what he did to Marcus, to your family. Richard looked up from his laptop with desperate hope. Emma? Is that Emma? Please, I need. She can hear you, I said. There was a long silence, then Emma's voice came through the phone, cold as winter. Tell my father that he made his choice when he tried to destroy the only boy I've ever loved. Now he can live with the consequences. The line went dead. Richard stared at my phone like Emma might materialize from it if he looked hard enough. The silence stretched until he finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. She's never talked to me like that before. Never. Maybe because you never gave her a reason to. I pocketed my phone and turned back to my laptop. But we don't have time for family therapy right now. The FBI expects you downtown in 45 minutes, and without access to your servers, you're walking into that interrogation room empty-handed. There has to be another way. Actually, there might be. I pulled up a secure browser and started typing. SecureDoc maintains backup logs on all document authentications. If Patricia and Sarah were forging your signatures, there should be metadata showing the actual device IDs and IP addresses used for each authorization. Richard leaned over my shoulder as I navigated to SecureDoc's administrative portal. Can you access that without company credentials? I still have investigative access from the Morrison case last year. They never revoked my forensic auditor privileges. I entered my login information and waited for the system to authenticate. If I'm right about the vulnerability, we should be able to see. My screen populated with data, and I felt my stomach drop. Richard, you need to see this. The authentication logs for Pemberton Holdings showed a pattern that made my blood run cold. Over the past 6 months, dozens of high-value authorizations had been processed using what appeared to be Richard's digital signature. But the metadata told a different story. These authorizations were all created from the same IP address, I said, pointing to the screen. But according to the geolocation data, that address is registered to a coffee shop in downtown Bethesda. The Grindhouse on Wisconsin Avenue. Patricia goes there every morning, Richard said slowly. She always insisted on starting her day with their Ethiopian blend. Look at the timestamps. Every single fraudulent authorization was processed between 7:15 and 7:45 a.m. Patricia's morning coffee routine. I scrolled through more entries, finding the pattern repeated over and over. She was literally sitting in a coffee shop stealing millions of dollars before most people had their first cup. But then I noticed something else that made my forensic instincts scream warnings. Richard, these logs show authorizations continuing through this morning. The last one was processed at 2:23 a.m. from the same IP address. I looked up at him. But Patricia was arrested hours before that. Then Sarah. No. I was already cross-referencing the data. Sarah Chen's attempted flight was at 1:30 a.m. She would have been at the airport when this authorization went through. Richard's face went white. Then who? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, * stop digging or the remaining pension funds disappear permanently. You have 1 hour to cease all investigation, *. Someone's watching us, I said, showing Richard the message. Someone who knew exactly when we accessed the SecureDoc logs. Richard's hands shook as he read the text. How is that possible? Because they're still inside your company's network. Patricia and Sarah weren't working alone, there's a third person with administrative access who can monitor our investigation in real time. Before Richard could respond, another text arrived, * Mr. Pemberton's cooperation with law enforcement would be unfortunate for everyone involved. The teachers and firefighters especially, *. They're threatening the pension funds, Richard breathed. If I cooperate with the FBI, they'll make sure that money disappears forever. I was already tracing the origin of the text messages, but whoever was sending them knew how to cover their tracks. The phone number was registered to a burner account that bounced through 3 different proxy services. This is bigger than we thought, I said, my mind racing through the implications. Patricia and Sarah weren't just embezzling money, they were part of an organized network. And whoever's running it has been planning this for months. Richard's phone rang, Agent Martinez again. Richard looked at me with panic in his eyes. What do I tell them? If I mention the text messages, they'll want to see all our communications. But if this person makes good on their threat. Answer the call, I said. But don't mention the texts yet. Buy us some time. Richard accepted the call with trembling fingers. Agent Martinez. Yes, I'm still planning to come in. He listened for a moment, his face growing paler. What do you mean there's been a development? I could hear Martinez's voice through the phone speaker. Mr. Pemberton, we need you here immediately. We've received information suggesting that the scope of this investigation is significantly larger than initially believed. How quickly can you get downtown? Richard met my eyes, and I saw genuine terror there. Whatever the FBI had discovered in the past hour, it was bad enough to escalate their timeline. I can be there in 30 minutes, Richard said. Good. And Mr. Pemberton, don't discuss this case with anyone else until you arrive. Anyone at all. The call ended, and Richard and I stared at each other across my living room. Outside, dawn was breaking over a world where Richard's empire had collapsed in less than 4 hours. They know something, Richard whispered. Something that changes everything. My phone buzzed with one final message, * tell Pemberton that some secrets are worth more than pension funds. He'll understand, *. I stared at that final text message, my forensic investigator instinct screaming that we'd stumbled into something far more dangerous than corporate embezzlement. Some secrets are worth more than pension funds, what the hell did that mean? Richard, what secrets could be worth more than $200 million? I asked. He was already shaking his head, but something flickered across his face, a micro-expression I'd learned to recognize after 15 years of investigating fraud. It was the look of someone who knew exactly what you were talking about but desperately wished they didn't. I have no idea what they're referring to, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Bullshit. I leaned forward. 5 minutes ago you were begging me to save your company. Now someone threatens to expose secrets and you go catatonic. What aren't you telling me? Richard's phone buzzed with another call, his lawyer this time. He declined it, then immediately received a text, don't go to FBI without me. Major development. Meet at office first. Even your lawyer is panicking, I observed. Richard, whatever this secret is, it's about to come out anyway. You can tell me now, or Agent Martinez can drag it out of you downtown in a federal interrogation room. He stood up abruptly and walked to my kitchen window, staring out at the sunrise. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. 3 years ago, Pemberton Holdings was hemorrhaging money. The 2019 recession hit our real estate portfolio hard, and we were 6 weeks away from bankruptcy. He paused, his shoulders sagging. That's when Patricia introduced me to her contact at Meridian Investment Group. I'd heard of Meridian, a boutique investment firm that specialized in alternative funding solutions for companies in distress. The kind of firm that operated in gray areas and asked very few questions about where their money came from. They offered us a $50 million bridge loan at extremely favorable terms, Richard continued. No collateral, minimal documentation, and a 5-year payback schedule that literally saved my company. I thought Patricia had found us a miracle. Let me guess, the miracle came with strings attached. Not strings. Laundry detergent. Richard's laugh was bitter. Meridian needed legitimate businesses to help clean money from various, questionable sources. Nothing illegal on our end, just processing certain transactions through our Malaysian subsidiary. Paper profits that would be washed through our overseas accounts and returned to Meridian as investment returns. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. You've been running a money laundering operation for 3 years. I thought it was just creative offshore tax management. Patricia handled all the details. She assured me it was completely legal under Malaysian banking regulations. Richard, you just described textbook money laundering. The SEC violations are nothing compared to what the FBI will do when they discover you've been washing money for 3 years. I pulled up Meridian's corporate filings on my laptop. Jesus Christ, do you have any idea who Meridian's clients are? I never asked. Patricia said it was better if I maintained plausible deniability. Their client list reads like a FBI most wanted poster. Russian oligarchs, Venezuelan oil executives, 3 different cartel-adjacent operations. I scrolled through more data. Richard, you haven't just been laundering money. You've been laundering money for people who make federal prosecutors salivate. Richard slumped against my kitchen counter. So when Patricia and Sarah started stealing pension funds, they weren't just embezzling from teachers and firefighters. They were stealing from some very dangerous people who trusted Meridian to keep their money safe. And now those people want their money back, pension funds be damned. I stood up, pacing as the full scope hit me. The text messages aren't coming from Patricia or Sarah. They're coming from Meridian's clients who just discovered that their laundered money has vanished along with teachers' retirement funds. My phone buzzed, *, we know Marcus works at Hendricks Auto on Route 29. Such a dedicated young man, working 2 jobs to afford that promise ring, *. The blood drained from my face. They weren't just threatening pension funds anymore. They were threatening my son. I stared at the message about Marcus, my hands trembling with rage. These people knew where my son worked. They knew about the promise ring he was saving for. They'd done their homework on my family while we'd been fumbling around in the dark. Richard, I said, my voice deadly calm, you need to call Marcus right now and tell him to take Emma somewhere safe. Somewhere public. What's wrong? I showed him the text. Richard's face went ashen as he read it. Oh God. This is my fault. I brought this to your door. Save the guilt for later. I was already dialing Marcus. It went straight to voicemail. Shit. His phone's probably dead. I tried calling Denny's directly, but the overnight manager said the kids had left 20 minutes ago. Another text arrived, *, Mr. Sullivan's cooperation in ceasing his investigation would be greatly appreciated. As would Mr. Pemberton's silence regarding Meridian's business arrangements, *. They want both of us to shut up, I said, thinking fast. You stay quiet about the money laundering, I stopped tracing the stolen funds. Meanwhile, 200 million in pension money disappears forever and some very dangerous people get away clean. Richard's lawyer called again. This time he answered. Michael? What kind of development? Richard's face went progressively whiter as he listened. When did this happen? Are you certain? He hung up and looked at me with hollow eyes. The FBI didn't just find evidence of embezzlement. Overnight, someone leaked Meridian Investment Group's client files to 3 different news organizations. The Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and Financial Times all received identical data dumps showing detailed records of money laundering operations spanning 5 years. My stomach dropped. When do the stories publish? 6 a.m. 43 minutes from now. Richard checked his phone. My lawyer says the leaked files specifically name Pemberton Holdings as a primary washing mechanism for over $300 million in questionable funds. 300 million. I thought you said 50 million. That was just the initial loan. Over 3 years, Patricia apparently expanded our arrangement significantly. According to Michael, the leaked documents show we've processed transactions for 12 different Meridian clients, including 2 individuals currently under federal investigation for trafficking. The scope kept getting worse. What had started as corporate embezzlement was now money laundering, pension fraud, and potential ties to human trafficking. And in 43 minutes, every news outlet in the country would know Richard's company was at the center of it. The leak wasn't random, I realized. Someone wanted this information public. Someone who benefits from destroying both Meridian and Pemberton Holdings simultaneously. Patricia? No. She'd want to keep this quiet, same as you. This leak serves someone else's interests. I was already pulling up more data on my laptop. Who else knew about your arrangement with Meridian? Patricia handled everything. Sarah processed the transactions. Those were the only 2 people. Richard stopped mid-sentence. Wait. There was someone else. Patricia's contact at Meridian, the person who set up the original deal. Viktor Kozlov. I typed the name into a search engine and immediately regretted it. Viktor Kozlov wasn't just Meridian's business development director, he was a former Russian intelligence officer with suspected ties to organized crime. His photo showed a lean man with dead eyes and the kind of smile that made smart people cross the street. Richard, I think Patricia and Sarah tried to steal from the wrong person. And now Kozlov is cleaning house, making sure everyone who can implicate him disappears, either literally or legally. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Sullivan. The voice was accented, professional. This is Viktor Kozlov. I believe you've been investigating some irregularities in Mr. Pemberton's accounts. Richard heard the name and went white as paper. I put the call on speaker. Mr. Kozlov. I was just reading about your work with Meridian. Such research. Very thorough. This is why I'm calling with a proposal that benefits everyone involved. Mr. Sullivan, you seem like a reasonable man. A man who understands that sometimes the greater good requires difficult choices. Kozlov's voice was smooth, almost conversational. I'm prepared to offer you $5 million to cease your investigation and ensure Mr. Pemberton remains silent about our business arrangement. Richard was frantically shaking his head, but I held up a hand to keep him quiet. On speakerphone, Kozlov continued. Additionally, I can guarantee that all pension funds, every dollar stolen by Patricia and Sarah, will be returned to their rightful accounts within 72 hours. Teachers, firefighters, city employees. They need never know their retirement money was ever at risk. And in exchange? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Mr. Pemberton withdraws his cooperation with federal authorities. Claims he knows nothing about Patricia's activities beyond basic embezzlement. You provide the FBI with a forensic report showing simple internal fraud, nothing more sophisticated. I muted the phone and looked at Richard. He's offering to make the pension funds whole. $200 million back where it belongs. But the money laundering would disappear with us. Kozlov burns down Meridian, eliminates all evidence of the washing operation, and starts fresh somewhere else. Meanwhile, hundreds of teachers and firefighters get their retirement money back. Richard stared at me with desperate hope. We could save them. All those people who trusted us with their futures. I unmuted the phone. Mr. Kozlov, how do I know you'll actually return the pension funds? Because, Mr. Sullivan, those funds represent a small fraction of what I stand to lose if this matter escalates further. The leaked documents that will publish in 37 minutes, they were not random. They came from a competitor who wishes to destabilize my operations. Patricia. Patricia is dead, Mr. Sullivan. Found in a Baltimore hotel room 3 hours ago. Apparent suicide, though I suspect otherwise. Sarah Chen will likely suffer a similar fate before morning unless she proves useful. The casual way he mentioned Patricia's death made my blood freeze. Richard gripped the edge of my kitchen counter, his knuckles white. The point being, Kozlov continued, I am now in damage control mode. I can either invest resources in silencing witnesses and recovering assets, or I can negotiate a clean resolution that serves everyone's interests. The pension funds are a small price to pay for your silence. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, *, Dad, Emma's mom just called crying. Something about Emma's dad and the FBI. We're coming to your place, *. They were heading directly into the middle of this nightmare. Mr. Kozlov, I need time to consider your offer, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Of course. But please note, the offer expires when those news stories publish. After that point, federal attention will make it impossible for me to return the pension funds without exposing myself to unacceptable risk. 35 minutes. That's how long we had to decide whether to take blood money from a Russian criminal to save teachers' retirement accounts, while potentially letting him escape justice for money laundering and Patricia's murder. I'll call you back in 20 minutes, I said. Excellent. Oh, and Mr. Sullivan. Your son drives a blue Honda Civic, license plate JHG 4492. I do hope he and Miss Pemberton travel safely this morning. The roads can be so dangerous before dawn. The line went dead. Richard and I stared at each other across my kitchen, both understanding that we'd just been handed an impossible choice wrapped in a very clear threat. The silence after Kozlov's call felt like standing in the eye of a hurricane. Richard slumped against my kitchen counter, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Outside, I could hear the morning traffic picking up, normal people heading to normal jobs, completely unaware that a Russian criminal had just threatened my son while offering to return stolen pension funds with blood money. Patricia's dead, Richard whispered, his voice hollow. He killed her, didn't he? Probably. Which means Sarah Chen is living on borrowed time, and we're next if we don't play ball. I checked my phone, still no response from Marcus about their ETA. The question is, do we take Kozlov's deal? How can we even consider it? He's a murderer. Who's offering to return $200 million to teachers and firefighters who'll never see that money otherwise? I paced to the window, watching for Marcus's Honda. Think about it, Richard. The FBI investigation will take months, maybe years. Even if they eventually recover some of the pension funds, how much will be left after legal fees and asset seizures? How many retired teachers will die waiting for their money? Richard's phone buzzed with another call from Agent Martinez. He declined it, but we both knew he couldn't avoid the FBI much longer. There's something else, Richard said quietly. Something I haven't told you about Meridian's operations. I turned from the window. More secrets. Because we're rapidly running out of time for surprises. The $50 million loan that saved my company 3 years ago, it didn't come from random criminals. According to documents Patricia showed me last month, that money was specifically chosen from accounts belonging to 3 pension funds in Eastern European countries. The irony was so twisted it made me sick. You're telling me that Kozlov saved your company using stolen pension money, and now Patricia has stolen from American pension funds? It's like some kind of circular nightmare. Pension funds stolen to create the infrastructure to steal more pension funds. Richard's hands shook as he checked his phone. The leaked documents that publish in 32 minutes, they'll show that connection. The FBI will trace the original Meridian loan back to those Eastern European accounts. Which means even if we take Kozlov's deal and stay quiet about the money laundering, federal investigators will eventually discover the connection anyway. My phone rang, Marcus calling. Dad, we're 5 minutes out. Emma's pretty shaken up. Her mom told her that her dad might be arrested today. Marcus, listen carefully. When you get here, don't park in the lot. Park on the street, engine running. And both of you keep your phones charged and ready. Why? What's going on? I could hear Emma in the background asking questions, her voice tight with worry. These kids had no idea their lives had just become collateral in a chess game between federal investigators and international criminals. Just do it, son. And Marcus? I love you. Dad, you're scaring me. 5 minutes. Street parking. Engine running. I hung up and turned to Richard, who was reading something on his phone with growing horror. The Washington Post just published their story early, he said, his voice barely audible. It's worse than we thought. They have bank records, transaction logs, everything. According to this article, Meridian wasn't just laundering money, they were specifically targeting American pension funds as revenge for sanctions against Russian financial institutions. Revenge? Kozlov and his associates systematically identified vulnerable pension fund administrators, corrupted them, and used their access to steal retirement money from American workers. It was economic warfare disguised as corporate crime. The scope finally clicked into focus. This wasn't random embezzlement, it was a coordinated attack on American financial infrastructure. And we were sitting in the middle of it, holding evidence that could either expose the conspiracy or bury it forever. My phone buzzed with a final text from Kozlov, *, the children are very close now. I do hope you've reached a decision, Mr. Sullivan, *. I could see Marcus's blue Honda turning onto my street, and my heart hammered against my ribs. 28 minutes until the story broke wide open. Less than 5 minutes until my son walked into the crosshairs of a Russian criminal who'd already killed Patricia and was hunting Sarah Chin. Richard, we need to make a decision right now, I said, grabbing his arm. Marcus and Emma are about to walk through that door, and Kozlov isn't bluffing about knowing their location. Richard's phone rang again, Agent Martinez, relentless. This time Richard answered, his voice cracking under the strain. Agent Martinez, I understand the urgency, but I'm dealing with a family emergency. He listened for a moment, his face going white. What do you mean Patricia Vance is dead? When did this happen? I could hear Martinez's voice through the speaker, professional but urgent. Mr. Pemberton, Patricia Vance was found deceased in a Baltimore hotel room approximately 2 hours ago. We have reason to believe her death is connected to the missing funds. We need you here immediately, your life may be in danger. My life? Richard's voice cracked. Sir, we've intercepted communications suggesting that multiple parties are interested in silencing witnesses in this case. Do not go anywhere alone, and do not speak to anyone about this investigation until you're in federal custody. The irony was suffocating. The FBI was trying to protect Richard from the same people who were currently threatening my son. Richard hung up and looked at me with desperate eyes. They're offering me protective custody. They know Kozlov is cleaning house. Which means they probably know about his offer to return the pension funds, too. I watched Marcus park across the street, exactly as I'd instructed. Think about this, Richard. If we take Kozlov's money and the FBI already knows about the threat, we become accessories after the fact to Patricia's murder. But those pension funds will be recovered eventually through proper channels. The FBI has forensic accountants too, and they don't negotiate with murderers. Marcus and Emma were crossing the street now, Emma clinging to his arm. Even from 4 stories up, I could see the fear in their body language. Emma's perfect world had collapsed overnight, and Marcus was trying to be strong for her while probably terrified himself. My phone rang. Kozlov again. Mr. Sullivan, I see the young couple has arrived safely. Such a touching reunion. Have you reached a decision? I put the call on speaker, but kept my voice low. The FBI knows you killed Patricia. They're offering Richard protective custody. Of course they are. But federal protection is notoriously unreliable, as Patricia discovered. Hotel rooms have such poor security, don't you think? Kozlov's chuckle was ice cold. The question remains, do you prefer to save those pension funds, or shall I redirect my resources toward more permanent solutions? The apartment door opened, and Marcus walked in with Emma. She looked like she'd been crying for hours, her designer clothes wrinkled, her usually perfect hair disheveled. When she saw her father sitting on my couch, her face hardened with an anger I'd never seen from her before. Emma, Richard started. Don't, she said, her voice sharp as glass. I know everything, Dad. Marcus told me how you've been treating his family, how you tried to destroy his job, how you called him trailer trash. Her voice broke slightly. I also know about your company. It's all over Twitter. Hundreds of millions stolen from teachers and firefighters. Sweetheart, I can explain. Explain what? How you've been laundering money for criminals. How people trusted you with their retirement and you let it disappear. Emma's composure cracked completely. Mrs. Patterson, my 3rd grade teacher, her pension was with your company. Mr. Rodriguez, who saved my life when our house caught fire when I was 12, his retirement money is gone because of you. Kozlov's voice came through my phone speaker, startling everyone. Miss Pemberton, such passion. Your father was protecting his family's future, surely you understand. Emma stared at my phone in horror. Who is that? Someone who can return every stolen dollar, Kozlov continued smoothly. Someone who can ensure your father avoids federal prison and your family maintains its lifestyle. All for the reasonable price of silence. Marcus stepped protectively in front of Emma, his jaw set with determination I'd never seen before. Emma, we're leaving. Now. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Kozlov said. Not until we've reached an understanding. The silence that followed Kozlov's words felt like a death sentence hanging over my living room. Marcus instinctively pulled Emma closer, his protective instincts kicking in despite having no idea what he was protecting her from. Richard looked like he might collapse, and I could feel my own heart hammering as I realized we'd run out of time and options. Mr. Kozlov, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, you've made your position clear. But there's something you should know, Agent Martinez is expecting Richard at the federal building in 15 minutes. When he doesn't show up, they'll come looking. Ah yes, Agent Martinez. Such a dedicated investigator. It would be unfortunate if his investigation led him to discover additional crimes, perhaps involving a certain forensic accountant who's been accessing classified financial records without proper authorization. My blood went cold. He was right, my access to the SecureDoc systems could be construed as unauthorized computer intrusion if the FBI wanted to press charges. Kozlov had just turned my attempt to help into potential federal crimes. What additional crimes? Emma demanded, her voice shaking but defiant. What is this man talking about? Marcus squeezed her hand. Emma, maybe we should. No. She pulled away from him, facing my phone with surprising courage. I want to know what my father did. All of it. Richard started to protest, but Emma cut him off with a look that could have melted steel. For a 19-year-old who'd grown up privileged and protected, she was showing remarkable backbone in the face of genuine danger. Miss Pemberton, Kozlov's voice carried a note of approval. Your father's company has been processing financial transactions for my organization. Perfectly legal under international banking regulations, though perhaps not appreciated by American authorities. Recently, 2 of his employees stole a considerable sum during these operations. How much? Emma asked flatly. Approximately $230 million from American pension funds. Teachers, firefighters, civil servants, people who trusted their retirement savings to your father's care. Emma's face went ashen. $230 million. I'm prepared to return every dollar, Kozlov continued. But only if your father and Mr. Sullivan agree to forget certain details about our business relationship. You mean lie to the FBI, Marcus said, his voice hard with anger I'd rarely heard from my son. I mean protect innocent people's retirement funds. Without my cooperation, that money disappears forever into untraceable accounts. With it, every teacher gets their pension back within 72 hours. Richard's phone buzzed with another call from Agent Martinez. This time, he didn't answer it, just stared at the screen with hollow eyes. Dad, Emma said quietly, Mrs. Patterson taught me to read. She spent her own money on classroom supplies for kids whose parents couldn't afford them. Mr. Rodriguez carried me out of our burning house when I was 12. Her voice cracked. If you don't get their money back. Emma, it's not that simple. It is that simple. She turned to face her father fully. You made this mess. You trusted criminals with other people's money. You let greed and arrogance cloud your judgment. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And you tried to destroy the only boy I've ever loved because you thought his family wasn't good enough for us. Marcus reached for her hand again. Emma, we don't have to. Yes, we do. She looked at Richard with disappointment that seemed to physically wound him. Because while my father was playing social games and looking down on your family, he was actually the criminal all along. My phone displayed a new text from Kozlov, * 12 minutes until the news stories publish. After that, returning the pension funds becomes impossible. Choose wisely, *. Agent Martinez tried calling Richard again, and this time the voicemail he left was audible to everyone. Mr. Pemberton, we have credible intelligence that your life is in immediate danger. Federal marshals are en route to your last known location for protective escort. Do not leave your current position. They're coming here, I realized. Martinez traced your phone. Emma looked around my small apartment with new understanding. This is why you wanted us to keep the car running. Someone's threatening us. Marcus's face hardened with a determination that reminded me of myself at his age. Then we leave. Right now. All of us. Where exactly do you suggest we go? Richard asked bitterly. Kozlov's people know our locations, our routines, everything. And the FBI wants me in custody. We go public, Emma said suddenly. Social media, news interviews, everything. Make it impossible for Mr. Kozlov to silence us without the whole world watching. It was actually brilliant, and coming from a 19-year-old who'd learned about her father's crimes less than an hour ago. Kozlov's laughter came through my phone speaker, cold and appreciative. Clever girl. But publicity works both ways, Miss Pemberton. Are you prepared for the world to know that your family's wealth comes from laundering money for Russian criminals? That your trust fund was built on stolen pension money? Emma's resolve didn't waver. If that's what it takes to get Mrs. Patterson and Mr. Rodriguez their money back, then yes. Emma's words hung in the air like a challenge thrown down before a king. Here was a 19-year-old girl willing to destroy her own family's reputation to save teachers' pension funds, while her father, who'd spent months calling my son, trash, cowered on my couch. You know what, Mr. Kozlov? I said into the phone. Emma's right. Let's go public with everything. Dad, what are you doing? Marcus whispered. I was already pulling up my laptop, opening social media accounts, news websites, everything I could access. I'm calling his bluff. Kozlov needs us silent to protect his operation, but he also can't afford to hurt us if we're broadcasting live to the world. Richard's phone rang again, Agent Martinez. This time Richard answered, his voice stronger than it had been all morning. Agent Martinez, I'm at 412, Maple Street, apartment 4A. I have information about Patricia Vance's death and the missing pension funds. He paused, looking at Emma with something that might have been pride. I'm ready to tell you everything. Excellent choice, I heard Martinez respond. Federal marshals are 2 minutes out. Stay where you are. Kozlov's voice came through my phone, no longer smooth and confident. Mr. Pemberton, you're making a grave mistake. No, Richard interrupted, standing up for the first time in hours. The grave mistake was thinking I was better than Sullivan's family because I had money. The grave mistake was trusting you with innocent people's retirement savings. His voice grew stronger with each word. The grave mistake was raising a daughter who had to teach me what integrity looks like. Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she stood straighter. Mr. Kozlov, I said into the phone while typing rapidly, I'm uploading every piece of evidence we've gathered to the Washington Post, the FBI tip line, and about 6 different social media platforms. Your window for quiet resolution just closed permanently. The pension funds will be recovered through proper legal channels. Might take longer, but at least it won't involve making deals with murderers. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway outside my apartment. The federal marshals had arrived. Marcus looked at Emma with concern. Are you sure about this? Once we talk to the FBI, there's no taking it back. Emma took his hand, her grip steady despite everything. Marcus, 2 weeks ago I thought my biggest problem was hiding our relationship from my dad. Now I find out my family's fortune comes from stolen teacher pensions. She managed a shaky smile. Compared to that, dealing with federal investigators seems pretty manageable. The knock on my door was authoritative but polite. Federal marshals. Mr. Pemberton, we're here to escort you to safety. I looked around my small apartment, at Richard, who'd gone from arrogant millionaire to potential federal witness in one night, at Emma, who discovered her trust fund was built on blood money and chose justice anyway, at Marcus, who'd somehow ended up dating the daughter of a money launderer while working 2 jobs to afford a promise ring. You know what's funny? I said as Richard moved toward the door. 6 hours ago, you thought Marcus wasn't good enough for your daughter. Turns out, your daughter's too good for your money. Richard paused at the door, his hand on the knob. Sullivan, after this is over, if Marcus still wants to give Emma that promise ring. That's up to them, Richard. But next time someone tells you a person's worth isn't measured by their bank account, maybe listen. The federal marshals were professional but urgent as they escorted Richard out. Agent Martinez lingered long enough to take our contact information and assure us that protective details would be arranged. As the law enforcement entourage disappeared down the hallway, my apartment fell quiet except for the hum of morning traffic outside. Emma collapsed onto my couch, emotionally drained, while Marcus sat beside her. So, Marcus said eventually, this has been the weirdest night of my life. Emma laughed, a sound somewhere between hysteria and relief. My father came here at 2 a.m. to ask your dad to save him from Russian money launderers. I think weird might be an understatement. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, asterisk well played, Mr. Sullivan. The game continues elsewhere, asterisk. But somehow, Kozlov's threats felt empty now. The story was already breaking across every major news outlet. Federal investigators had their witness. And most importantly, Emma Pemberton had chosen justice over comfort, integrity over inheritance. Marcus, I said, I think you picked a good one. He squeezed Emma's hand and smiled. Yeah, Dad. I think I did. Outside, dawn was fully breaking over a world where teachers' pension funds would eventually be recovered, where Russian criminals would face American justice, and where a working-class kid and a rich man's daughter had found something worth more than money. It had taken all night, but Richard Pemberton finally learned what I'd been trying to tell him for months. Sometimes the people with the least have the most to offer.